en Eco 360. Top 5. Actividad portuaria.
La actividad portuaria creció 12.6% los primeros 5 meses de 2017.
Top 4. Panama Port.
Panama Port administra los puertos de Cristóbal y de Balboa, localizados en ambos extremos del Canal de Panamá.
Top 3. Aportes.
Panama Port Company ha aportado al Estado más de $370 millones en 20 años.
Top 2. Comercio marítimo.
El comercio marítimo no está en su mejor momento. Según las estadísticas, habrá una disminución significativa hasta 2018.
Top 1. Competitividad.
¿Cuán competitivos son los puertos panameños en este momento?
Eco 360.
Señoras y señores, buenas noches, bienvenidos aquí a Eco 360. Hoy vamos a tener un programa interesante porque vamos a conocer más en detalle cuál es la realidad de ese privilegio que tenemos desde el punto de vista geográfico en Panamá de contar con dos mares en una corta distancia entre el uno y el otro, pero además el desarrollo de una actividad que en este país genera muchísimos resultados positivos, estoy hablando de la actividad portuaria. Y para conocer acerca de este tema tan especializado, hoy nos honra con su presencia el presidente ejecutivo de Panama Ports, el señor Paul Wallace. Mr. Wallace, welcome to Eco 360.
Gracias. Buenas tardes.
Now, I was reading about how Bloomberg used to make the definition of Panama Ports. It says that your company develops and operates both ports at Balboa and also in Cristobal, right?
Yes, that's true.
Now, there's a diversity of services that you bring, your company.
Yes.
For example, that include supplying drinking water to dock vessels. This information is from Bloomberg.
Yes, no, that's true.
Yeah, as well as electricity to vessels through power plants. Also, transferring vehicles from the storage area in the port to vessels and vice versa.
Yes.
Both ways. Also, storage and import and export of vehicles.
Yep.
And transportation of passengers also.
That's true.
Now, that's from one vessel to the other in the pier, right?
Yes, exactly.
Now, your main business, even this is very interesting, this model of business. Can you let us know the main issue for your company, where is concentrated?
I think the first thing to recognize that our principal activity here is container handling.
Mm-hmm.
Container handling cargo coming from Asia to the US, from Europe to Central America, West Coast, South America, to the US East Coast. So principally as is container handling.
So it means moving cargo, right?
Moving containers with cargo inside, yes.
You also move solid bulk?
Yes, we
Grains.
move general cargo and bulk as well.
Cargo freight station services?
Yes, that's true.
Gantry cranes? Forklifts?
We use that as part of the operating equipment.
Part of the operation. Now, you also provide manual labor services and for loading and unloading cargo at both ports, right?
Yes, that's true.
And repairing and tightening and loosening cargo. Now, in this case, your company and the area where she has the main business is growing very interesting, the activity. I have numbers here that says in the first 5 months of this year, the activity has grown 12.6%. Very good numbers. Can you let us know about that?
I think that we have to look at the market in its entirety. Yes, our business is up around sort of 12%.
Yeah.
But it's important to separate.
Mm-hmm.
The operations that we have in Cristobal in Colón are up by about 70%. But our greater portion of the business is in Balboa.
Okay.
Balboa, the dynamic has changed because of the expansion of the canal.
Mm-hmm.
Now what we see is more cargo is staying on vessels directly from Asian production through to US consumers using the canal. So the volume of cargo continues to move through the canal, but it's not necessarily stopping at our ports now, because the expansion of the canal means that bigger vessels can transit through Panama. So there are several levels of interpretation of the numbers. Yes, overall, Panama Ports is bringing significant growth to Panama maritime sector. But the situation in Balboa is plateaued, and I don't see any significant growth over the next few years. What we do see, though, is that we are seeing bigger vessels which are much more efficient for us to handle, but it means we also need to ramp up the resources that we have, because they come concentrated. So we have a series of now of peaks and troughs, and getting the workforce to flex up and then take into consideration the troughs is the way that we need to move forward to deliver the product that our shipping lines need, which in terms of bigger vessels is a lot more resources, concentrated resources.
So you have at both ends of the canal.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, you have your very strategic positions. Now, let's see this. You have your company has 20 years operating in Panama.
That's right. Very proud of that.
And thank you. And also, Panama Ports is part of a multinational group called FK Hutchinson.
CK Hutchinson.
CK Hutchinson.
Yes.
There's a holding in Hong Kong, right?
Yes, that's true.
And was founded in 1997.
See.
Now,
here.
The reality now, in this moment, because Panama has now diplomatic relations with China.
Yes, that's true.
Is that a good business, right? Is that a good opportunity for your company also, right?
Well, to be honest, it really doesn't make an awful lot of difference to us in terms of our ownership or our strategy.
Really?
What we see in terms of globalization is that the opportunity to grow domestically in China has slowed down. So now we're seeing a lot of Chinese investment across the world. So we see the One Belt, One Road initiative and strategy passing through Asia, through to Europe. That's being replicated now in the Americas, where there's a lot of interest from Chinese organizations to invest in infrastructure.
Now, you see at this time that how the canal is working now gives a lot of advantages to all the vessels and ships that goes through the canal.
Absolutely. I think that we have to give certain absolute congratulations to Panama Canal Authority. Obviously, we've now seen the year since the canal was expanded, and 103 years since the inception of the canal. So it really is a cataclysmic change in the way that the canal has changed the business. Panama maritime sector is the paramount sector in terms of the Panamanian economy. And what we see, yes, is the expansion of the canal has allowed bigger vessels to transit from Asia through the canal to the US East Coast and vice versa. So that has brought a significant change to the business. However, it means that not necessarily do we see port growth. Yes, we see shipping growth. We see more ships. We see more bigger ships.
But
that
changes for good.
It changes for good, absolutely. We see more ships passing through the canal, paying more tolls, carrying
more money, so
more cargo.
Sounds good.
In terms of the port sector, though, what we see is that the ships no longer need to unload to pass through the canal, which changes the port sector here. So that's an important differentiation.
Okay, I'll be right back in a few minutes. Voy a un cambio comercial, amigos televidentes, con el presidente ejecutivo de Panama Ports, el señor Paul Wallace. Al regreso, entonces, estaremos hablando más a profundidad acerca del concepto de Panama Ports y su realidad en este país.
Eco 360. Eco 360.
Mire, ha habido un incremento interesante en el sistema portuario panameño y los números son bien halagüeños para nosotros, para Panamá, porque dice una fuente oficial que de enero a mayo de 2017 se movilizaron 2.800.196 contenedores de tamaño TEU en el sistema portuario, en términos generales, que son más de los 2.490.000 que había en el año 2016. Now, I was explaining about the growth of this sector. Now,
Yes.
it says the 2,196 containers TEU. What it means? TEU.
A TEU is a 20 equivalent unit. So the capacity of a vessel, modern day vessels now have a capacity of around 20,000 TEU. So that's 20,000 20-foot equivalents. But some containers, of course, are 40 foot, and thereby that's 2 TEU. So what we see now in terms of the canal, it used to be that 3,500 TEU vessels could pass through the canal. Now we see vessels frequently of 10 to 13,000 TEU passing through the canal, which obviously means the cargo moving directly from Asia through to the US East Coast goes nearer, and transshipments are being effected nearer to the market, which is why we see well-reported growth in places like Savannah, Miami, New York, and places like that.
The ports in the States, right?
The ports on the US East Coast, but
Yeah.
equally we're also seeing a migration of cargo that used to go into the US West Coast ports of Long Beach. They're now obviously coming through the canal and then are being trucked and railed across to the center of the US. So we are seeing a dynamic change, and not only in container vessels, but now gas vessels in terms of LPG and LNG. We're seeing
What's LNG?
liquid nitrous
right.
gas. So we're seeing a lot of activity on the canal now, which is fantastic for the Panamanian economy.
Now, there's a question that I would like to hear from you, because I've been reading a lot about this reality, and I want to know under your point of view. There's some people says that PPC, or Panama Ports Company, did not distribute profits with the Panamanian state. Is that right? Or is true or not?
I think that we have to look again on a different level.
Okay.
We came into the port industry when it was very much in its infancy. 20 years ago, and over that 20 years, we've made an investment of $1.5 billion. Now, the first thing that I learned in business is you don't borrow money to pay dividends. So what we have done is all of the profits that have been made here in Panama at the two ports which we operate have been reinvested back into the business to demonstrate the growth that we see today.
How this investment works, just to our citizens to know that, because there's a lot of noise about that particular situation. So it's a very good opportunity for you and your company to make it clear, okay?
Yeah.
How can we understand much better your point of view of your company?
Okay, what we see is Panama needs to maintain its competitivity. In that respect, we need to deliver a port which is fit to handle the vessels of tomorrow. So we've constantly maintained and invested to make sure that we have deep water, big cranes, efficient terminal, and the right number of employees to handle those vessels that we see, which has been a constant investment, which is now why Panama Ports is not the oldest port operating in Panama, but we're certainly the biggest. And that investment of $1.5 billion over the last 20 years is testament to investment. You can't make investments and pay dividends at the same time. Now, our shareholder has not taken money out of the business. We've actually invested it and continue to grow the port. So the asset value of the port, and with the government's 10% stake, that's equal to the same as the 90% owned by our parent company, the asset value has increased and increased and increased. But it's not only about sort of returning dividends to government. You have to look at the employment created. We have 2,200 employees.
In both points?
Across the two ports.
The two ports, all right.
So their wages and salaries are all being contributed to the Panamanian economy, into the local communities, as well as the spend that we make on fuel, the spend that we make on buying assets. All of that is value
What
added.
kind of assets do you usually use to move?
Well, our principal assets are key cranes and yard cranes.
All right.
And a key crane is $10 million, as an example.
Each one?
Yes, and we have 25 key cranes, all of that sort of value. But it's not only the cranes, the landside infrastructure behind that in terms of terminal cranes and tractor units and land. And the investment is ongoing, but importantly, the job creation is something that we also need to recognize. It may be that there is a question over dividends, but we also have to recognize...
There's a question. That's what I...
But we've also delivered $250 million to government over that 20-year period. So we are generating considerable economic value for Panama.
Now, in the near future, let's talk about the investment. Do you have a program?
Sure.
A projection, economic projection? What's the future in this condition now to invest in the next years?
Well, importantly, we made the call to invest early. So we already have the crane capacity to handle 20,000 TEU vessels. So we say that the canal can handle 10,000 to 14,000. Panama ports can already handle 20,000. So we are 2 steps ahead of what our customers, the shipping lines, are demanding, which is deep water and big cranes, and the ability to handle mega vessels simultaneously, and if necessary, move cargo from one vessel to another vessel during work operations. That's a big value for ourselves and for Panama. We've kept pace with the demands that the canal has invested. We have invested alongside that to ensure that Panama continues with its competitive advantage.
Yeah, it makes you, as long as you are competitive, also our country is competitive.
I think it's a supply chain, and we all contribute.
It's a chain, that's correct. Yeah.
Sure.
Mr. Wallace, I'll be right back with you in a few minutes. So, voy a un cambio comercial, no se vayan. Vamos a dar una vuelta al mundo aquí en Eco 360.
Eco 360.
Bueno, nos distingue con su presencia esta noche el presidente ejecutivo de la prestigiosa empresa Panama Ports, el señor Paul Wallace. Mr. Wallace, before you came to Panama, you are from UK, right?
Yes, that's true.
Before you came to Panama, do you have experience before in any other country about how to handle this very specific or very different kind of business? I mean, the ports.
It's in my blood. I've
Really?
spent more than 32 years in this industry.
32 years?
Yes, that's true. Before here, I was in Tanzania in Africa.
Africa, right.
And that was an interesting project.
So how many years you spent there in
I spent just over 2 years in Africa.
2 years.
Before that, I was in the port of Felixstowe, which is one of the largest ports in Europe. And before that, I spent time in Belgium, Holland, and I've worked for shipping companies as well as port operators.
Now, the Maritime Authority of Panama, of course, just revealed that this operation has been, there's a motive for some reasons that people used to talk, and some kind of dissatisfaction for some people. Is that acceptable for your company? You feel it makes no justice to your investment in Panama? How do you feel under that point? Because there's a lot of lawyers fighting about, and we're going to talk about that after you give me your answer.
I think that one great thing I see in Panama is public debate. And people,
which is good. That's
absolutely.
That's democracy.
People,
right.
because of the canal and the proximity of Panama and the connectivity, it's natural. If that's our geographical advantage, it's going to be close to the heart of people. And therefore, we expect a lot of public debate. It's therefore very important, as a business leader like we stand, that the people are given the true facts in order to make the decisions on how we go forward. Certainly, in terms of projects like Corozal and PSA at Rodman, it affects the livelihood of Panamanians. I said that we had 2,200 employees. There's a suggestion that the new ports, both PSA at Rodman and Corozal as an example, would be green and automated. Now, in terms of being green, there can't be any greener than we are. We have electrified quay cranes, we have electrified yard cranes, and we're very, very keen to make sure that our social responsibility and our responsibility in the environment is safeguarded. But 2,200 employees, there's a suggestion that new ports here will be automated. So it's therefore very, very important to recognize that automated ports don't create jobs for traditional stevedores. So from my perspective, I have a duty. I have a duty to the 2,200 employees and to their families and to the local communities to provide sustainable employment, which is why we have been so vocal in terms of giving the information to the market for people to make their own decisions.
Actually, I have some numbers here about Panama Port Balboa and other one from Panama Port Cristobal. You have 47 hectares in Balboa.
That's true.
Right? And you have 28 hectares in Colón.
Yes,
in
yes.
Cristobal. The expansion of the area is very important for your operation. And it says here that in the case of Cristobal, you have a dock of 970 meters for containers and 3 positions so the ships can get into it.
Yes.
For also Panamax and post-Panamax, is that right?
Yes, that's true.
So that means that before the expansion of the canal, I'm just asking you, you were supposed to make some sort of investment to let the post-Panamax and all these big ships get into it. And you have 13 cranes. And you have also, inside the terminal, you move in trains. Is that right?
Yes, we have rail connections at both ends.
Rail connection.
Yes, and that's very important because we have to look at the total Panama proposition. We have some vessels that call at Balboa in the Pacific. We have some vessels that call at in the Atlantic section, both at Cristobal and MIT and the Evergreen terminal. Connectivity between those terminals is critical. We are very keen to champion the fact that freight goes on rail and we try and get the freight off the road. We cannot have significant numbers of trucks on the roads unnecessarily. Yes, at the end of the day, we need to deliver trucks to destinations and collect exports. But all freight that can go on the rail should go on the rail. Therefore, it's very, very important when we look at new projects, in terms of PSA at Rodman as an example, they're not connected in terms of rail. So are we going to see 500 additional trucks coming over the bridge on a daily basis? For me, people have to understand the consequences, and that's why it's very important that we have such lively public debate in Panama.
Now, your operation in Colón, okay?
Yes.
I'm talking about Cristobal.
Yes.
There's a situation there because has an expansion in how you move the containers. Says that it grows or 15.3% in the period from January to May.
Okay. If you measure year on year from January to July 2016, January,
it's like a semester,
July,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. The same, we are up 75%, which is why you see that overall Panamanian volumes are probably up by 12 because there are more port operators active in Panama.
PSA International
Yes.
started operations in December 2010.
Okay, yep.
Okay. You receive, I was talking about China. For the expansion of the canal, you received different metals that were we're going to use in the expansion of the canal. Now it's over, that expansion. How do you make to fill that area of these materials in this case?
Okay. In terms of port activities, yes, there's a lot of port activities in the Atlantic, but it seems to be the hot discussion is now in the Pacific. PSA are at the moment in the process of building 2 million TEUs worth of capacity. 2 million TEUs, which will probably be delivered the first phase by the end of this year. And then onwards and from then on. And then obviously we have the Corozal situation, the Corozal debate. If the volumes in the Pacific section stand at around 3 million TEUs as they stand today, we have 5 million TEUs of capacity. Panama's not standing still. PSA Rodman will deliver another 2 million capacity, and Corozal is cited to deliver 5 million TEUs of capacity. So you have a throughput of 3 million and a capacity of 12 million. It's not difficult to see that there's an overcapacity. If those ports are then not delivering jobs because the infrastructure is automated, we're obviously going to fight for those 2,200 employees who are dependent on Panama ports for their livelihoods.
How are you going to fight for that?
We continue to fight in terms of giving our customers the best experience. We continue to invest in deeper water. We continue to deliver with big cranes, and we use our labor force in terms of servicing their needs, ramping up, and then trimming down in the troughs. We have to become more and more efficient. And that's a challenge for leadership of today. We have to deliver more and more and more efficiently. We're seeing bigger vessels and greater peaks and troughs.
A lot of challenges you have to...
Absolutely, but that comes with the territory, and it makes every day interesting, yeah?
And it's more fun.
Of course, absolutely, yeah?
Well, I'll be right back with you, right?
Thank you.
Now, vamos al cambio comercial. Al regreso aquí en Eco 360, comercio marítimo. Ese es el tema.
Eco 360. Eco 360.
Bien, compartiendo esta mesa de Eco 360 con el presidente ejecutivo de Panama Ports, el señor Paul Wallace, que hoy nos está dando información muy precisa acerca de esta operación portuaria que nos ubica en una situación privilegiada. Voy a decir por qué. Mr. Wallace, Panama, in Latin America and the Caribbean area, Panama is the second country with more movement of cargo or containers last year.
Yes.
The first place belongs to Brazil.
That's true.
Brazil is in a very difficult situation, political, economic. That's the reality now in Brazil.
Yes.
Do you agree with me?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, called in Spanish CEPAL, CEPAL,
Yes.
shows this situation of our country, how we're going to maintain that privileged position of being number two, not only number two, behind a giant in the area or in the hemisphere in America. How are we going to play that game?
I think that we have to look at the differentiation.
All right.
The ports in Brazil are handling their own imports and export cargo.
It's a big market, of course.
Sure.
Yeah.
In Panama, less than 10% of the throughput of the ports in Panama are actually Panamanian imports and exports. So we are a connection. We are a transshipment hub. What we're seeing now, because of the expansion of the canal, more cargo, the principal trade lane is from Asian production into the US East Coast. We're seeing more cargo staying on bigger vessels going through to the US East Coast. So we're actually seeing a decline in those volumes. At the same time, and this relates to the Pacific, we're seeing a significant growth in cargo from West Coast South America, most especially refrigerated fruits and vegetables and meat and things like that. So the downturn in Asian, imports into the US from Asia is somehow being offset by the explosion of growth and especially refrigerated cargo from the West Coast South America through to the US East Coast and through to Europe. So what we are seeing is that those bigger vessels are not discharging anymore. They're coming to Panama to top up with cargo coming from West Coast South America. As they are reefer cargo, it's time sensitive. So transit times become even more important in the market. Now, the important thing for Panama is that our geographical proximity cannot be beaten. The vessels are coming past the door of ports in Panama. People talk about losing cargo to Buenaventura. It's absolutely incorrect because Buenaventura is 2 days steaming in the wrong direction. Now, if a vessel is carrying a lot of time-sensitive reefer cargo, the cargo is not going to go 2 days in the wrong direction. In the same way that you would suggest that calling Pacific coasts like Costa Rica or places like that, or even then we talk about a canal going to Nicaragua. The proximity of Panama cannot be beaten. We just need to make sure that we keep pace with the developments in the maritime industry, which is why ACP now is looking at the 4th set of locks in order to upscale tonnage from 13,000 TEU vessels ultimately to the vessels of today, which are around 20,000. In terms of a port operator, our volumes are not growing, but we're getting fewer but larger vessels, which has a peaking demand. And then we have to change to service that peak to retain our competitive advantage.
You have to be a very good competitor. Now, our country,
yes,
we have a lot of competitors too, because even though we are number 2,
yes,
and the question is, which one of these countries that I'm going to mention you now are the most serious competitors to the Republic of Panama? Let me put it this way. For example, with activity in this business, Mexico,
yes,
Colombia, Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Argentina, Jamaica, and Dominican Republic.
yes.
Which one of those are more serious competitors to our operation in Panama?
I think that we're in a different segment. I think there is, if a vessel is calling Buenaventura on its way through, if it's going to call there anyway, there may be some transshipments that happen there. But in terms of being direct, cargo coming from West Coast South America, feeded to catch those vessels as they transit through the canal, we maintain that advantage. Yes, we see we see growth in Mexico as an example, but it's a different market. Costa Rica is a completely different market. So yes, we're not complacent. We're
bigger, of course,
sure.
In territory,
yes,
which means to go from one coast to the other takes too much time. I understand that. Costa Rica is not that example.
Yes,
It's less territory than
sure.
Mexico. For just an example.
But steaming up to Costa Rica and then coming round and then going through Panama, it's better to have smaller vessels on fast schedules connecting Costa Rica through to Panama Pacific. And then those cargoes, which are usually refrigerated cargoes and desperately needed in the US East Coast and Europe, to be transshipment in Panama. So again, we see a decline in volume directly from Asia to the US East Coast.
But is that decline?
It's very, very important because more cargo will stay on bigger vessels. In the past, our bread and butter was cargo coming from Asia to the US East Coast. That is now declining. The cargo is staying on the vessels. But what we're trying to do is to fight and to bring new customers. We're seeing a consolidation in the industry. There used to be about 26 independent services with shipping lines. Now, basically, we are only seeing about 3 consortia. So 3 consortia pooling their volumes on bigger vessels, which independently they can't fill. They're coming together. So we've seen a huge rationalization. So in that respect, fragmented port capacity doesn't serve anything, because if you have 4 or 5 carriers on the same vessel, they want to hub their cargo in one place. They don't want to be doing a milk round of several ports. And that's what we need to understand in Panama. Fragmented port capacity does not add value. What we need to do is have big ports handling big vessels with large turnarounds of cargo.
Now, we're going to have a commercial now, so we'll continue after that. Así que voy a un campo comercial aquí en... Pero antes, ¿saben qué? Entérate es lo que viene, no se vayan.
Eco 360.
Well, Mr. Wallace, we're just a few minutes from the end of this conversation. The Panamanian media months ago said that the Panama Canal Authority delayed the delivery of business proposals and, of course, to compete for the concession and design and the construction and development of an operation of a container port at Corozal. I think it's West Corozal, right?
Corozal, yes.
Great. That generated, as you remember, a conflicting situation between Panama Ports Company and the Panama Canal Authority. What happened at the end of that situation, or it's not over now? Still?
I think the way I took it, there was a suggestion that the market would decide. But I think the market did decide. What we saw were 4 principal and prospective investors, and there was no bid. So I think that in terms of the market deciding, that was a very, very clear signal. As I said before, though, if you have a throughput volume of 3 million and you generate a capacity of 12 million TEU, we have a problem in Panama. And as I just said, fragmented port capacity does not add value. We need big ports to handle big vessels with large turnarounds.
What about Corozal? What's your opinion about that? Because I read this opinion that makes me sounds funny, but it's not at the end of the day. It says should be a disadvantage according to some directors or executive of Panama Port that says you won't have the same condition with a new kid in town was the word used. What kind of response do you have for that?
No, I think that we have to recognize it's a timing issue. At the moment, if port capacity is injected, then we have a problem. We have labor instability, because if we lose 50% of our cargo to a competitor...
50%?
Well, what you have to see is there are very narrow groups of shipping companies now, 3 groups. If we lose a percentage of that, then the cargo will move, but unless it creates jobs, we will have a problem in the communities in Panama, which is why we're fighting so hard to defend our turf, and we're not going to apologize for that. But competition is good for any industry. Competition will drive efficiency. We can't change what's going to happen. All we can do is to make people aware. And in terms of the port of Corozal, it may be a private concession. But my understanding is there's $200 million worth of Panamanian money that will go into infrastructure before the port is created. The question is whether that 200 million will be better spent on schools and hospitals if it's going to create a problem in Panama. Now, that's not for me to call, and that's why, as we opened, debate in Panama is very lively. And I think it's very important that people have the facts to make an objective decision.
Now, many other portuary operators, they have decided to open ports in the neighborhood,
Yes.
and which obviously is going to hurt Panama, or you think it's not going to hurt Panama? That kind of
I
competition.
think it's all about timing. At the moment, because the vessels got bigger, because of the fantastic achievement of the Panama Canal, we have to understand that more cargo will stay on bigger vessels and not get transshipped. So the port sector in the Pacific is plateaued and will continue at best to hold around the 3 to 4 million. Port capacity in Panama will not create imports and exports between an Asian exporter and an American importer. That's not the way things work. Ports are simple facilitators that has to go with market demand. And at the moment, the market demand is to have more concentrated, bigger ports and not fragmented port structures. But of course, the market will always decide.
So we have a very strong competitor in Panama ports. In case somebody else wants to come here to our market, you are always trying to do your best to invest in the according to the way the ports are. I mean, the activity is growing up. That's what you said?
Sure. Now, what we've done is that the growth over the last 20 years has been exponential. It's been really high. In order to sort of handle that demand, we've had to invest, and it stands at around 1.5 billion, which is testament now why Panama Ports is the largest port in the region, which is down to shareholder investments. So we are not frightened of competition, but we're certainly not going to back down and allow somebody to come in. We will work harder, we'll invest harder, and we'll ensure the sustainability of jobs for people working for Panama Ports.
Okay. Mr. Wallace, you want to send any kind of message to our people from your company?
No, well, really, thank you very much. We've been here for 20 years. I think we've made a significant economic contribution, and people just need to look at the scale and the employment that Panama Ports creates. And also don't forget that we have returned $250 million at least back to government.
Okay, we do appreciate very much that you are here with us.
It's my pleasure.
So I think we're going to see each other in other occasion, because Panama Ports has many things to say to our people, because it's a very, very important operation for our economy and for the growth of our country. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Oh, my
Amigos
pleasure.
televidentes, le di las gracias, señor Wallace. A ustedes, por supuesto, mi sentido de agradecimiento por acompañarnos esta noche aquí en ECO 360. Bernardo Rodríguez estará con ustedes en la próxima ocasión. Buenas noches.
ECO 360. ECO te invita a revivir este contenido entrando al canal 1 de VOD de Cable Onda.